Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast, where we help people combat the negativity that inundates their daily lives with a positive perspective and positive action. Today's guest is Sallie Wagner. Sallie is a speaker, author, lawyer, real estate broker, and instructor, and life coach, and probably a few other things. Your What's Next strategy and life alchemist, Sallie incorporates outcome-based techniques such as trauma-aware modalities to help you get concrete results as you ditch those unwanted behaviors and habits and fears and phobias, limiting beliefs and decisions that keep you from living your best life. Sallie's signature coaching program is REBOOT Your Thinking, how to install and uninstall mind apps, a comprehensive program that guides you to achieve life-altering, mind-bending results as you identify and get rid of mind apps or paradigms so you can move forward with the life you choose and create for yourself. Sallie's continuing mission is to impact lives as she coaches and guides you to get rid of behaviors, beliefs, and decisions that hold you back so you can fully embrace and integrate the challenges that life brings in order to discover, create, and live the life that makes you come alive. So please welcome to the show, Sallie Wagner. Sallie, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Well, why don't we tell people about you, how you got to where you are? Because with that bio, you've done a lot of stuff and you probably still are. Yes. What don't you do?
I don't do Windows. How about that?
Okay. All right. Good.
Sorry, old joke, but
I get it.
So when I started in college many years ago, I started out as a physics major. Wow. And I was one of those, I couldn't really decide. So I ended up majoring and minoring in everything, finally settled on theology. So it was kind of physics to metaphysics.
Okay.
And then I got sidetracked and distracted and I went to law school. I know. and yet I still had that passion for the science and the philosophy and the theology. And several years ago, just a whole series of events and perhaps epiphanies, it led me to reconnect with that earlier vision that I had of myself and my life. And as I started on that path, life coaching came to me. And I was resistant, as many of us are when we're faced with change. You know, all those messages we tell ourselves, oh, I'm busy. I'm already running businesses. I don't have time. I wouldn't know where to start. You know, all the excuses we give ourselves. And finally, I said yes. And that has been an amazing journey ever since I said yes.
Wow. God works in mysterious ways.
Amen.
Yeah, it's always something to, you know, when you realize that, hey, I was created for more, and you just kind of sit back and, okay, here we go. And that's a great feeling. And you're a living example of that.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that I found interesting, you talk about on your website, or even in your bio, we mentioned it, ditching unwanted behaviors with mind-bending results.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, because that sounds like, okay, is it yoga? Is it, you know, what are we doing here? Mind bending, changing behaviors?
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes back to the concept of mind apps, paradigms. Okay. Yep. You know, I updated the language because it's hard to conceptualize a paradigm, and yet we all know what apps do on our phones and other devices. You know, they slow things down, they drain the battery, they have competing purposes. And we have the same thing going on in our subconscious mind. It goes back to the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Right.
And it's because of those things in our subconscious mind that are controlling our behavior. And so when we can wrap our minds and our hands around that concept, then we can use tools and techniques to change at that level, so that we really can get mind-bending results that we want to see in our lives, that we consciously choose. And so we use EFT, emotional freedom techniques, and neuro-linguistic programming, and trauma-aware modalities, so that we can really make those changes at the inside level. So it's not just a matter of willpower, but it truly is who we become.
And you mentioned a couple of big ones there. I mean, the NLP, obviously, Tony Robbins has done that for years, and you see such great results. And maybe you've trained on some of his things or not. That's a big one. What about the trauma piece? I'm not that familiar with that one, but tell us about that if you could.
Sure. So, probably all of us,
Mhm.
each of us has experienced trauma in some form or another to one degree or another. And trauma can express itself differently for different people, depending upon our resilience in life.
Okay.
For what's traumatic for one person may be that's
Yeah.
nothing to somebody else,
Yeah.
right? And vice versa, based on our resilience. And so because trauma presents in different ways, for a coach or an advisor who is not aware of that, they may have a tendency to blame the client because they're not progressing in the way that they thought they should.
Okay.
And then it's like, oh, you're not thinking the right way. You're not thinking enough happy thoughts, or, whatever it is, right? And that's not the case at all, because trauma does affect us physiologically. It affects our brains and how our brains function. And so when we're caught in that trauma, we're very much backward looking. It's everything is in the rear view mirror instead of through the windshield in front of us.
Right.
And when we become aware of that and work with people to address those things in a very subtle way, I should say. So we don't want to start and make it worse, right? Then they're able to shift their focus to be more forward looking and actually entertain the idea that, wow, maybe I could make some positive changes in my life.
Okay. And on the basis of NLP, that's not instant by any means. That's over time, but could you give us some examples of that? I've heard some of the ones that Tony Robbins has done, but give us something that you've seen and done.
Sure. So, and I typically work in combination with EFT and NLP. I think the two together are immensely powerful. So I've worked with people on, and these are adult people, on issues of childhood abuse that they're still struggling with and dealing with as adults. And so to resolve those issues of grief and loss, the loss of a family member, a loved one. Sometimes it could be something that someone has struggled with for years to overcome and they just can't do it, like biting their nails. Or sometimes it's eating and drinking habits and patterns and practices. Sometimes it's very aspirational, like, I want to have better study habits. When my kids were younger and they were studying for boards and exams and everything, I would do the techniques with them. They would ask me, Mom, can you help me? I'm studying. I want to be able to retain more information. So there are all kinds of ways that we can use this remedial to address a problem, preventive if we know we're going to be in a difficult situation, and then aspirational.
Good. And that's always something that helps people, that aspirational piece, because obviously we all have dreams, we're all things we want to do.
Yeah.
Does that help them to build their confidence, their positivity? How does that integrate with their growth then?
Absolutely. Because imagine something that seemingly as mundane as biting your nails. I've never done that, but I have family members who've struggled with it, and I know that it affects them and how they present themselves to the world. So if you're an educated person with a high-powered career and you bite your nails, I don't know. If you're a business person and you want to present your best self to your clients, and yet you have this little habit that you haven't been able to kick on your own, that really is sort of, and maybe people don't even notice it, but we notice it. And it diminishes our own opinion of ourselves. And it really holds us back because we have that limiting belief about ourselves. So something as I said, seemingly as simple as that can have a huge impact. And once people tackle that and they have that confidence of the success, then they're able to address other things in life.
Yeah, I had another person on my podcast one time, and he talked about that idea that your brain doesn't necessarily have the positive movie, if you will, in your mind that says you can do that. And so what you're talking about reaffirms that idea of you're creating habits or actions that will build a movie in your mind, so you can achieve that goal, you can overcome that obstacle. just building that
Absolutely.
confidence, which definitely leads to more positivity in your life. You understand your value, you understand your strength. So definitely
Yeah.
good stuff. Wow.
And we use techniques like NLP and EFT to anchor those kinds of
Yeah.
positive movies. And we incorporate it into our daily routines. So every time you open the refrigerator or pick up your car keys or brush your hair or brush your teeth or whatever it is that you do routinely, you can start to think of yourself in that way.
Right.
And it reinforces it. So you are continuously building that positive movie about yourself.
And it's interesting because what I've heard you say a lot there is visual.
Yes.
It's the movie, the visual, the picturing ourselves. Those are all visual signals. Are we more as a species more visual than most other things, do you think? Or it's a personal thing?
It is very individual, and
Okay.
that's a lot of what NLP is about, to identify how people process information. So visual, auditory, kinesthetic, auditory digital. There are some variations. I think probably the vast majority are visual, and yet there are those people who are not. And so we want to be able to communicate with them in a way that they can easily process that information. So it's not always visual. Sometimes it's that voice in your head. What are you hearing? What are you telling yourself? So and that can be a downfall for some people for affirmations. If I say, I'm amazing, I'm fabulous, I'm confident, and we have that little voice going, yeah, right, in your dreams. You wish, that snarky little 6-year-old who's, and so there are techniques to overcome that resistance as well.
Wow. And that's, I think, a big piece in it, because our mind can go negative so quickly.
Yes.
And that resistance, that fight, that another person I had on the show, she was talking about, a lot of times you need to have a conversation with that fear and ask it reality-based questions to see how real is it, because we put these thoughts in our mind that are in the future, but nobody can predict the future. Right. So we're building this this rat race, and it's like, it doesn't even exist. Why are you creating that for yourself?
Yes, exactly. And that's so true. Most of our fears are not real.
Yeah.
There are some very real fears in the world. The world can be a scary place, and yet most of them are not. And I'm always reminded, and I don't mean to be preaching, but in the Psalms, it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And the thing about shadow is it's not real.
Right. Wow. Thanks for that reminder, because so many times we breeze over those words. But a shadow. Okay, what do you do with your shadow? I mean, playing with my niece's son, he's 16 months, and where's your shadow? And he goes, right. It's, you can overcome that. So great reminder there. Well, another thing that came up, personal power to change and overcome. What are those benefits? Because that's a big one. I mean, let's share with people those, that power of change. I think that's so critical.
Yeah, it is hugely powerful. And, when we go back to the concept of the mind apps, the paradigms, and how often do we run on autopilot in our lives? We're driving someplace and suddenly you realize you're there and you don't remember how you got there. Or, out of the shower and I'm going, did I shampoo? Because we get so caught up and we have those routine tasks, those apps running in the background, and we don't even think about them anymore.
Right.
And so there's so much of our lives that we do that way. In fact, 95 to 99% of our day, we're running on autopilot. Our subconscious mind is in control, and our conscious mind is controlling things only 1 to maybe at most 5% of the day. And so the idea is to restore that power of conscious choice in our lives, and to consciously choose how we respond to our life events rather than react. And how powerful is that in a relationship? If you're no longer reacting, rather you're responding from a position of strength, in your job, in your business, in your career, in the decisions you make in terms of how you care for yourself.
Right.
all of those things.
I often talk to groups about that same scenario, the respond or the react. And just the traffic around here in Tampa and St. Pete, even in your area. Yeah, how many times you drive down the road and you want to react, but it's like, really?
Yeah.
Stop a minute. Do you know what's going through that person's head? Do you know what's going on in their family? They may be rushing to the hospital trying to get to a pregnant wife having a baby. You don't know. But if you're okay, just let it go. There's response allows you to think about a situation and calmly evaluate it, I think.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a benefit for people to take that minute, take that little bit of time and just think.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, because otherwise we're not in control. Some other part of us is in control, but not we ourselves.
And if you can, you touched on a good one right there. Sometimes people get, you hear about it, they'll get mad, they don't even know what they realized, what they did. And you just talked about that as another part of us is in control. How does that happen? Is that just, letting all things go to that reaction, or what is that would you go blank, if you will, and not realize what you're doing?
Yeah. So I think it's a lack of mindfulness, perhaps, and it's that running on autopilot. When we're on autopilot, we're not mindful. And it all starts, a lot of people have theorized it starts with our thoughts. And I would take it back a step before that. It starts with our mind apps, our paradigms, our programming that we get from family, friends, society, the world, for the most part, all well-meaning, right?
Yeah.
And yet it may not always be in our own best interest to continue to act in that way. And so we have that, we have thoughts, and then we have feelings based on those thoughts. So if I'm telling myself something that's not true about myself, like I have to be perfect,
right?
And then I'm not perfect, I'm going to have a feeling about that. I'm going to feel bad. I'm going to feel angry or frustrated. Gotcha. And then I'm going to take a certain action based on that feeling. And maybe the action is I lash out at you because I'm feeling frustrated because I'm not perfect, right? And then I'm going to get a certain result based on that action. Yeah. And that result is then going to reinforce my mind app, my programming, my paradigms, and then I'm just going to repeat that cycle. So the key is, let's interrupt it. Yeah. Be mindful. When you notice a feeling, stop yourself and ask, what was I just thinking that now I'm feeling this way? And then, is that thought true or is it not true? It sounds awkward, and yet it's amazing when you start doing it. It just becomes who you are.
And that's a good point, because again, it goes back to the idea we've got to stop a minute and, that thinking, that taking the minute and the time, so that we can realize what's going on and give a proper response. And it adds so much value to us as people in that interaction, which is critical. You can see it in many situations where some people will avoid certain people because the type of reaction they may give.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's okay, wait a second, really, people, you see this a lot of times, for instance, at drive-throughs, you go through and they're just trying to work, but people, they want their stuff in, 30 seconds or less, and then it's not happening. And then they start yelling. And I always try to make the person laugh. I know they're working hard, make them smile or something. It's not an easy job. Appreciate them being there if I have to go through the drive-through scenarios, but make somebody feel better. It's not necessarily about you. You can give away stuff that's simple to do that'll make somebody feel good.
Absolutely. And the reward ultimately is yours, right?
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't like to see a smile on somebody's face? Yeah. Why not? It makes you feel good. It helps them feel good. It's all good. So what are some examples of the NLP and EFT techniques that, could help people change? Just maybe one or two that people might be able to integrate on their own.
Right. So with EFT, there's a whole protocol that we use. Sometimes people may have heard it referred to as tapping.
Okay. All
So
right.
there's a whole round of tapping that we do on certain meridian points that are based on the Chinese acupuncture points.
Wow.
But there are some shortcuts, and one of the things, and you brought up traffic.
Yeah.
So sometimes in traffic, because we don't live that far from each other,
Right.
and it's
Oh,
pretty
stop,
crazy.
stop.
So like on the karate chop point, the heel of my hand. So sometimes when I'm driving and the traffic can be frustrating, right?
Yeah.
So I just kind of tap on my steering wheel right there, and
Okay.
that can be very calming. And I can do that on the table in front of me if I'm in a
Right.
meeting and I'm feeling a little bit,
It's a good inside secret there. You see somebody
Yeah,
doing it, okay.
exactly. Yeah. And so that is a great thing to do.
Yeah.
In NLP, we talk about anchors. I
Yeah.
mentioned that before, to anchor a certain thought or a certain behavior with something that you're already doing as part of your normal daily routine, because you don't want too much new stuff too soon, right?
Right.
And so if you already have a routine, it's easy to graft something else onto that. So the positive thought about, I'm calm, I'm confident, I'm whatever it is that you want to think about yourself, and then anchor it to opening the refrigerator door, or, as I said, picking up your car keys, anything like that. And it will reinforce that notion in your head.
And those are good because like you said, it's simple things we can integrate and stack onto what we already do. We open the fridge door, and that, and those anchor points, that's a good reminder, those anchor points, and the positive, if you will, I want to say affirmation, but positive reaffirming of yourself on those points that, hey, you're good, that's a big one. I think people realizing their value.
Yes.
And their greatness. I think that's so needed today. That's why I do what I do with this. But people understanding that value they have within them. How do you help that come out of? Do you help them to realize that so that it comes out more? I mean, that's critical, I think.
Yeah, because that's one of the big beliefs that we find with people. That sense of worthiness. The belief that I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving. Those kinds of beliefs, and then we make certain decisions in life based on that belief. If I believe I'm not worthy, then I'm going to make certain decisions in terms of relationships, right? In terms of my job and my career choices, and how I treat myself. All of those things stem from that belief. And so there are very specific techniques with EFT that we can use. One is called the personal peace procedure, where we can address those kinds of things. And then there's another technique in NLP that we can use. It's called quantum time release, which sounds pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. All right.
And the idea is to identify those types of beliefs and root them out, replace it with something more positive, so that we can, as I said, we change the thought, then we change the feeling, we change the action, and we change the result.
Wow. Remember that thought, action, result. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, if you can tell us, I mean, you're rebooting your thinking program. If you can, it talks about MSG, or in the mind apps.
Right.
Fill us in on the MSG thing, and it's not the stuff in the Chinese food.
No.
Fill us in on that, because that looks really interesting and exciting.
Yeah. So MSG stands for mindset, skill set, get off your asset. And I think those three concepts encapsulate a lot of very important principles in coaching and in life.
Yeah.
I think Bob Proctor, rest in peace, he said something like, it's 95% mindset.
Yeah.
And that's so true. I think it all starts with mindset, and mindset isn't just thinking happy thoughts like Peter Pan, right? There's a lot more to it than that. There's some hard work involved in mindset. And then skill set is, well, first of all, most of us are not taught how to have the right mindset. So many times we need new skills to have the right mindset.
Right.
And with skills, we want to think about stacking them so that we can have multiple skills that are complementary, that really can broaden and deepen our success in life and business and whatever, so good communication skills, goal setting skills, that's a skill right there, right? Not procrastinating, taking action. And that leads us to the G part, get off your assets. Because without action, all the other stuff is just philosophy. We have to take action to make things happen, to get those results that we want in life.
And that's so true. And I wrote a book about that same concept. So life don't owe you nothing. And just that idea, because it was based off the idea. I was kind of frustrated with my middle son, who wasn't sure what he wanted to do, but he wasn't doing anything about it. And that, like you said, you got to take action. And for the longest time, he was looking for a car. Well, finally, the other day, he said, yeah, I think I want to go over to the dealership. Okay, let's go. It's just, you didn't allow time to change his mind. He's like, let's go. Got it all squared away, and he's driving a new car now. But it's that idea that you definitely have to take the action, but the steps before, sometimes they do take time. That's hard, and that's hard for me as a person that wants to get the action done and so forth. I got to realize I can't do everything at once.
Right.
And other people are not that way with, are different from me. So you got to have patience.
Yes. Yeah. And your point about taking time is a very important thing, because, we want to take action, but we want it to be purposeful and intentional. And that's where the mindset and the skill set come in. So, we have our goals, big vision picture for where we go on in life. And then we have our systems and our processes in place, which are our daily action steps that are going to take us in the right direction. So that it all needs to come together.
I got to ask, because of your background. Okay. You're, a lawyer, you're real estate agent, an instructor. Did that tie into this, or does this tie into that? It's an interesting concept, because I can see where they definitely go hand in hand.
Right. Yeah. So I think there is a lot of crossover. In my real estate practice, it's not a traditional practice. I have a consulting company, and we do broker and contract compliance consulting for real estate brokerages in Florida.
Oh, cool.
So
okay.
we work with over 2,500 agents, and they call me up, they ask me questions about transactions and contracts and all kinds of things. So definitely mindset helps with that, so that I can get the emotion out of the way, to really look at, okay, what's the contract saying, what's going on in this transaction, so that I can give good guidance. And I can also, in my coaching capacity, perhaps guide them to, let's get the emotion out of the way. Let's just do it. It's a real estate transaction, right? Because when we get emotion involved in those kinds of things, it clouds the issue. So I think there's definitely a lot of back and forth there with what I do.
And I snicker when you say, get the emotion out of it, because with today's real estate market, you can't have emotion, because 10 to 1, you're probably going to get, somebody's going to get it before you. And I'm a numbers guy. My background was business and accounting. I get it. There's no emotion in that. The numbers are what they are. They're facts. Okay. They're either positive or negative. And if they're negative, change it to positive. How are you going to do that? You got to take action. So, that's interesting you say that.
I always think of the line from A League of Their Own, there's no crying in baseball, there's no crying in real estate.
There can't be. You don't have time for that now. That's something. Well, Sallie, tell us where people can find out more about you, getting a hold of you, your other programs, because I only touched on a couple of them. I know you got more on your website. So tell us about that.
So my website is Sallie, and that's SALLIE, Wagner, WAGNER.com.
Okay.
And I'm happy to have people reach out to me. There's a link on there. You can email me. You can set up a time to talk with me. And there are also links for some free ebooks and that sort of thing.
Great. And we'll make sure we have all that in the show notes, because you various programs that could meet many people's different needs. So definitely check out her website, check out what Sally's doing. It's not like she's busy or anything, 20 different things you do. So that's thank you for doing what you do. I really appreciate your encouragement and your positivity in our world and what you're helping people to do. It's definitely a shining light. So thank you for doing that and continue to do that. Thank you for being a guest today on the Encouragement Engineering podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Sallie. I appreciate you. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.